I finally did it. I completed Kiryu's entire journey, at least to the point that we knew it back in Yakuza 6. So, throughout the last about 5 or so months on this channel, I started with the Yakuza 0. It was a franchise that I wanted to get into for a very long time. I don't even know if I was talked into it. I think I randomly just did it. And in the last 5 or so months, I have played through 0 all the way to now Yakuza 6. And boy, I've had something a little unique and a little different to say about each one of these, but I actually think 6 is one of my favorites. I don't think it is my favorite. I think 0 is still my favorite as of this point. I think Kiwami 1 and 2 are extremely good. Kiwami 1 is probably my second favorite, but I really think 6 and Kiwami 2 can fight it out for my third favorite Yakuza game so far. I know there's the Judgment series. I know there's still Like a Dragon, and then we get the return of Kiryu and the man who erased his name this November. So I had to go through it, and what I wanted to do when playing through this game is kind of pretend like this was his final story, right? Now, you don't know at the time when this game is leading up, when this game is released, you don't know what they're going to do to him at the end. And I mean, spoilers for the ending. They did similar things to what they've done in past games, but with some twists. And I really, really love the ending. I really love this game overall. There are some weaknesses, much like there are really all of these Yakuza games, but we're going to talk about that all in this video. If you're new here, if you like this stuff, make sure, as always, you give it a like, subscribe. Again, I've gone through now 7 Yakuza games, and I will go through the rest as time goes on, but I also obviously cover many, many other games on the channel. All right, what I want to do is I want to start with kind of the peripheral stuff, the visuals, the gameplay, things like that, and then we'll get into the story and the characters and the plot and all that jazz, the meat, I would say, probably of this video. But I do want to spend a little bit of time on the gameplay, on the visuals, because you have to think in terms of how I played this. I played them in order of the game, not necessarily in order of release. So, I start with 0, which I think was like a 2015, 2016 game, right? So, like, relatively new, this kind of new age Yakuza formula. Played Kiwami 1 and 2. I mean, the engine is so good. It looks so good. Going around the city, the gameplay, you can hit people into, the buildings, like restaurants and stuff. It's really, really good. But then it backtracks significantly because 3, 4, 5, it's just the remastered versions, right? So then you got to go back to, like, I think 2009 was Yakuza 3. I think it was 9, 10, 11, or 9, 10, 12, something along those lines. But now we're back. We're back with 6, which I think was like 2016 or 17. So we're years and years later, and we're back to kind of the new age engine. And oh my God, it felt so good. It felt so good in cutscenes to see them all in their beautiful high definition glory. There's multiple, obviously, we haven't really talked about this actually in past videos, but obviously there's multiple iterations of cutscenes in this game. There's the really good looking CGI ones that just look like outrageously good. Then in this game, there's where they'll talk back and forth, and it kind of does play out like a cutscene, but you can skip, right? You can skip through the words and it'll kind of just jump to the next thing. And then it'll be more of like the text box stuff. I don't even think this game had like the lower tier of cutscenes. This game always looks good. This game is always moving at a really good high definition feel, and it's not just the characters, it's everything. I mean, the maps look incredible. It was great to go back to kind of like favorite locations, but then also new ones, Hiroshima, and it looks awesome. Like, everything in this game visually looks really, really good. So I want to get the visuals out of the way. It felt just refreshing to get back into this franchise and to see it in honestly, like a new light, and that may actually be very literal. Going into the gameplay, I honestly think this is a big reason why this game can stand toe-to-toe with some of the better games in the series, because, there are some issues with the story, and there might be the biggest issues with anything in this game with the story and where they chose to go with several different characters or several different plot lines. But I think a thing that's largely made up that's not in 3, 4, 5 is the gameplay. The gameplay in this is phenomenal. They change how the leveling and putting in like attribute points, that changes basically like every single game, but I do think this is the same kind of system that Kiwami 1 or Kiwami 2, or maybe both of them. It's been a little while and I've played too many of these, but I like the system. I think it really pushes you, or it encourages you to do things that are outside of the main story so you get more experience. So whether that's running into people on the streets, which, by the way, it feels like they toned down the amount of people that'll attack you on the streets. I hated that in some of like the 3, 4, 5. I think there was way too many people that would attack you, and it could stop you walking down the street. You might fight 5 different groups, right? Where in this game, it might just be one. So, but it encourages it, and it's fun. It's fun to fight these people. It's fun to pick up objects and whack them and all this really, honestly, at times wacky stuff. It encourages the side missions because those give you certain points, right? And I did plenty of them. I definitely, I started out this series by doing a lot of the side stuff. I probably did the most side stuff in Yakuza 0. Did a lot of side stories for Majima, did a lot of stories or side stories for Kiryu. Then it kind of, again, you play 7 of these games, actually more than once a month. And then, you're going to start to like not do some of the outskirt stuff. And that's what happened. But in this game, again, I'm trying to play it as, okay, well, this is it. This is it for the character. I mean, obviously I know. I know a little bit of what's going to happen. I know a little bit of, obviously, well, he doesn't die. And he obviously comes back and becomes a main character or a 1B character in what's going to be like a Dragon 8 or whatever it's called, Infinite Wealth. So you have to play it in the moment, and that's what I try to do. So I try to take in as much of the game as humanly possible. And again, they're actually pretty good. A lot of the side stuff in this game, or side stories, are actually pretty meaty. They're pretty entertaining. They do, I feel like, repeat some things that have already been done, some kind of storylines that have already been done. They just kind of rehash it here. It's whatever. It gives you the experience. It's fun to do. It's more times you get to beat people up, and so all of that stuff is good. In terms of the actual combat, the actual gameplay, I will say it might be my favorite installment, but now it's a little unfair because I played 0, 1, 2, and I'm sure I liked it. In fact, I think for 2, I insanely loved the combat. I'm pretty sure. Or maybe it was 1, or maybe it was both of them. I definitely remember liking the combat. And again, it kind of takes a nosedive. This one brings it right back up. It's not without its issues, though. I will say the combat is a blast. The combat is really fun. You feel very powerful. It actually feels a whole lot easier. There might be a few reasons why it feels easier. Again, the emphasis on upgrading your character. You do always feel kind of powerful. The heat mode, or in this, game's version, I think is very streamlined. It's very easy to understand. You can upgrade it kind of separate, right? So I think this one used kind of both sides of the gameplay to the best it can. So just the normal fist fighting, the normal dodging. When you get hit, there's abilities to kind of get yourself up really fast while dealing damage. You fight some insane enemy groups in this game. You do some different scenarios where like you can throw in like oil drums and blow things up. Like they emphasize, I think, a little bit of diversity in this game, in the gameplay, versus what they have in the past. So I definitely appreciated that. The one big weakness, though, is the ragdoll. I don't know what the technical term would be, so I will just call it ragdoll for the purposes of this video. So, like, immediately, because again, I haven't felt the gameplay being like this since at least Kiwami 2, if it even felt like that, right? Or maybe it was Kiwami 1, because I think maybe those released in the same year, maybe Kiwami 2 released in the same year. Again, there's too many of these things, but it's been so long. It's been a long time. So as soon as you start, it feels heavy at times, like when you have a weapon. At some, when you're like swinging it, you have to plan it quite well. You can't just go swinging. It's got a little bit more weight. You have to plan distance between you and the enemy. So I actually appreciated that, but I will say there are some pretty hilarious moments in this game where you'll knock an enemy and they'll kind of like fly up like 6 feet, or they'll fly back probably too far. There are some, even with you as the character, or obviously as the enemies that you're beating up, there are some pretty weird effects, or the collision detection. There's some weird stuff going on, mainly ragdolling it, that kind of is like, well, I don't know if I love that all that much, but it kind of adds to the craziness of the fight, so I'm not going to hold it too. Again, like, overall, I love the gameplay. I think the gameplay, even when the story kind of dips, it's like, well, let's just get going, because I know there's going to be a really cool fight scene, or I can always go off and do kind of whatever, but like, it's always fun to fight. The bosses in the game are fun to fight. Like, they're interesting to kind of match toe to toe with and figure out what they're doing. There is no moment in this game, like, I've complained about several of the endings, right? Several of the endings of, like, I don't know if it was 3, but I think 4 and 5, when they have everybody go after a boss, right? So every main character has kind of an opposing foe. I know I had talked about that, some of them feel mismatched, like, and some of them are just not fun to play as versus the other one. I can tell you, and I think that helps. I think that really helps the game's atmosphere. I never felt all that frustrated. I don't even think, oh man, did I die? I maybe died like once or twice. It was nowhere near as many times as I died in really any of these other games. It felt easier. I was playing on medium. It felt easier, even though a lot of the things are more simplistic. You can only have so many of each health thing, and each one is limited, so you can't carry like the most expensive ones and they'll heal. And honestly, as you get your health up, which I maxed my health, I maxed actually quite a bit of my stats. I was in, I think, like the A tier by the end of the game. So a lot of things were maxed out. When I needed health, I would need to take several potions or, energy drinks, or whatever they call them, to just get it maybe even halfway or 3/4. I could never even fill the thing all the way. So they actually went kind of simplistic with healing and actually made that almost harder. But I actually felt just the game itself was easier, and it was not even close to being as frustrating in any of the fights, the big group fights, the bosses. Now maybe it's because it's one character. You get very, very good. You get very, I guess, mindful of what Kiryu is able to do and how to use his abilities. Whereas in the past games, 4 and 5, you're juggling all of these characters, and some of them are better at one thing than the other thing, right? So you kind of have to change up the play style. In this game, there's no such thing as that. There's only one character, and again, I think that's simplified or streamlined, I think, for the better. So gameplay really carried this one. Gameplay's king. You ever heard that thing with games? I actually think that kind of helped this game out quite a bit versus some of the other games that I think it never really hurt the other games. I would bring them up for like 30, 45 seconds in these videos. You look at the time now, I've spent quite a bit of time talking about it because it is, I think, just a much better aspect of this game. Now, in terms of everything else, oh boy, okay, buckle in, because this game is all over the place, and I think to some degree it's to the game's strength. I think to some other degree it actually, I think, branched out too far, okay? Let's just jump to the chase there. So the idea of looking for Haruto's father, and that being primarily most of the game, or at least maybe like 50, 60, 65% of it, I actually didn't mind it. Now, I don't know, honestly, I know there's gripes with the story. I know one of the main things with 6 that I had heard leading into 6 was you're either going to like the story or you're going to hate the story. I honestly think compared to the other ones, it's obviously different, but it's still in the same kind of bubble, and I don't think it's wildly worse or maybe even better, but I actually liked it. Because I love Haruka. I think she's a great character, and, we haven't really, like, obviously SN5, a lot of it is on her, but, she's singing and dancing, and it's a very weird way of kind of centering it on her. We haven't had something like this, and more specifically, literally this, because she's in a coma most of the game, right? But it all revolves around her and kind of like figuring out what happened to her, right? I mean, it's a detective kind of mystery thing that I actually really liked. Now, what I would have preferred, because if you read I'm looking at the TV because I'm scarred for life. If you read the description of Yakuza 6, it literally talks about Haruka getting into I think it says car crash, but that she's in a coma. And it's like, why would you... Now, I don't remember any of the marketing, any of the push for this game, so I assume that was well known, like, leading into this game. That's fine. I would have preferred not knowing, because I do think it's a huge moment, early on in the game. Obviously, it starts with Kira, like, a little bit more in time. I like the time jump. Like, the beginning starts a couple days, into the adventure, and then it goes backwards, and then it catches itself back up. But, like, I felt really, like, saddened by what happened to her, and the mystery of, okay, well, who hit her, and why? And, like, there has to be something to it, and she has a kid, and how is that even possible? Is she even old enough to do that? And, like, all these different things. I actually really liked it. It keeps it... I would honestly say it keeps it pretty darn centralized and, like, straightforward for a large amount of the game. Then it gets wild. Then it gets crazy. And I think a lot of ways pretty okay, specifically even the ending. But then other ways, like, I would have preferred it to be, again, more kind of focused. Because I don't think, like, a journey to look for her father was all that bad or all that, like, crazy. Maybe it was not crazy enough, and that was kind of the issue with it. But that is most of the game, right? That's most of the game, is figuring out what happened and connecting the father. And yes, there's wars breaking out and the triad and all this stuff. One thing I would also say, in terms of a negative, I don't know how they could have done it, but it was just a thing to me, like, at the end of the game, Majima, like, his usage was pathetic in this game. Now, like, again, I don't know how I would fix it, because you have him get arrested because of all this kind of war that's going on, and different leaders of the Tojo clan trying to take over, so they get rid of Daigo and they get rid of Majima, so you have to throw them in prison. So you see Majima in the beginning in the hospital, right, where it connects to 5, which, by the way, I like that. I like how it starts at the end of 5, and that's really cool. And then Saejima gets arrested, and it's like, oh my god, what's going on? He's getting arrested again. All he ever does is spend time in jail, but I like that character too. And then you see him again at the end in the car, but it's tough. Like, it's Kiryu's last story, last time as like the standalone main character. It's taking place separate from where the Tojo clan even has like a really good grasp of. It's talking about all of these wars between different factions, and again, kind of these like coups going on or trying to go on. So I don't know how Majima would fit if you did it, but I felt like his loss. Like, I actually really like the new group that Kiryu finds, finding, I guess, Haruto's father. I really like that. I really like that group. I think some of the switching that they do, where like first they hate you and you beat them up countless times, then they really like you. You're their Anarchy or whatever, and then towards the end of the game, then there's that one mission where they despise you and you have to fight them, and then when another group comes, they revert back and they say, okay, we're all cool again. So I think they flip-flop a little too much, but I actually like their personalities. I think Nagamo, I hope that's how maybe you say his name, he's really, really fun. I like his thing where he just is very like, his personality comes out quite a bit. He'll like slap people if he doesn't agree with what they said or did. He's in control, but he's also kind of not. Like, he's really cool. I would say in terms of side characters, whether they're for comedic relief or whether they're legitimate side characters, he would be up there. And I think that helps. I think a lot of the supporting cast in this game is actually really solid, really strong. And while I can't remember half of their names, so I guess how solid are they? But yet I can never remember their names, in these games except for the main ones. But they're really fun. I think it's a really good group that this game has assembled. Okay, so you get all of that, and for half the game, maybe a little bit more than half, it's a murder mystery, even though there is no murder, but Haruka could go at any time, so it could maybe be a murder mystery, and you're trying to figure out what happened. You're trying to figure out, well, why does this seem like it's a bigger deal than it probably should be a smaller deal, but it's actually a gigantic deal, and we have to move Haruka from hospital to hospital. We have to keep her hidden because people are going to come after her, and it's kind of wild. All right, I like that. I would say once we get to the secret of Anamochi, and hopefully, again, that's how you say that one right, probably not. The characters in this game do say things a little bit differently than each other. Hirose, the older man, I'm pretty sure that's how you say his name, although some characters will shorten it. I don't think we'll put the E at the end, and sometimes when they're talking to each other, maybe it's the lingo, or maybe it's not, I don't know. But anyway, once you get to this, okay, and you get to this naval submarine, like, then it starts to kind of fall apart. Now, I'm missing things, clearly, but I'm trying to focus on just, like, the biggest things that stood out to me. I think when you think of the craziness and when you think of just these individual missions that kind of push the story, again, it's not vastly better or worse than any of the past things that came from it. And I just want to kind of throw that out there, where that's why this game to me is pretty darn solid, or kind of lines up with even the best of the series, because I can remember, like, Kiwami 2, it's all over the place, and there's some really good story moments and there's some really bad ones. And I don't know if there's any really bad ones in this game. I think there's really good ones, and then ones that kind of, like, again, I think they get a little too crazy when they were never crazy to begin with, and then they kind of just did it. You think to, like, one's ending is really what gets me. It's such a good ending, and we'll talk about the ending in this one. This one might be my favorite ending, and I think that gives it kind of bonus points. But the general story, and then, the submarine, and trying to keep it hidden, but then there's all these betrayals happening. I would just say the idea that they were housing a massive, and that was like the big deal to them. That got countless people killed. That got Hirose to go against his own people, to kill some of his, I guess, best friends, but maybe they were like sons to him, right? Their fathers. He murdered them just in the street. Like, anybody could have seen it, but he killed them. He like took in the boys, and he did it to protect a submarine. So again, that one's a little far-fetched. That one's a little crazy, where I kind of wish that the secret was not something that was like, the I don't know, the size of the Statue of Liberty. I would have preferred it to be a little bit smaller or a little bit more personal to any of the characters. A big, massive submarine that's just kept hidden almost in plain, well, it's not in plain sight, but like it is right there. It's like off the coast. It kind of loses me a little bit. But what I will say is it collects itself and it figures itself out for the ending, because for all the betrayals and the swappings that are going on, I actually think whenever somebody dies, if there's supposed to be an emotional moment, I think it does relatively land. I liked Hirose quite a bit. I liked him as kind of like the cool old man, where he's like, he kind of comes in halfway through conversations. He doesn't seem like he's all that dangerous. Obviously, he is dangerous, but you don't know that at the time. He's a really great character. And, again, his arc is, I would say, pretty good. Like, he couldn't bring himself to kill the people when he was ordered to. And I mean, that did get him killed, but I like integrity. I like that character quite a bit. And then when it comes to the ending, look, Kiryu's been through a lot. He's died multiple times in this series, only for him to say that he hasn't died, right? This one I do think is different. This one is like, all right. I would also say this. There's some like cliches in these games where characters talk too long, or the gun will be on the ground right next to the bad guy and nobody will decide to go and pick it up. And that will happen over and over, and it'll lead to people dying. It'll lead to almost main characters dying throughout the entire series, okay? They got to really watch these guns. However, I would say in this game, there's probably the least amount of that, period, in any of these games. And I really like that. Number one, the ending of this game does not take place on a rooftop. It takes place on, or what would you call it? Probably not a pier, but it takes place right by the water. So I like the difference there. Also, what I was hinting at with these cliches, when you go through everybody, now why they didn't pull out a gun and start shooting you, I don't really know. They thought maybe they had some really, really strong people there, which they did, but none of the lackeys had guns. Okay, when they pull Haruka out and say okay, now you're going to stand there and you two are going to get tortured by us because we got basically your daughter figure. I love that. That's not even really a cliche, right? Where it's the cliche is, why doesn't anybody have weapons? Why does Kiryu have to go through all these people, 50, 100 people, take out a couple bosses, none of them have guns? That's the cliche. But having him be well, I can't do anything because Haruka is being held at gunpoint, and then he has to get whacked with the pole. It's really good, and you feel really bad. And it's also let the dragon out. Let this man flip out and take this guy out. Now, obviously, he won't kill, and that was a little bit of an annoyance as well as this game went on. It's hey, I would say this. There are some very killable people in this game. There are some people that really, I think, kind of deserved it. And if Kiryu was to break his golden rule for anything, I really thought he would do it for some of these characters. Some of the, again, twists of the girl being shot on camera and then she wasn't actually dead. That got me. I actually really thought she was dead. So bravo to them. They fooled me on that one. But, another thing with Kiryu's no kill rule, when he shoots down those helicopters with a rocket launcher and clearly kills maybe 6 people because of that, he killed. So I get he won't kill. He has other people kill for him, inadvertently. He gets other people killed because he refuses to kill. He almost gets himself killed because he refuses to kill. And yet he's got no problem taking a rocket launcher, firing at a helicopter, and most likely those people are dead. So I just want to kind of throw that out there. But look, the actual ending of this game, where he's, shot multiple times, which they do that again. I mean, that's the same thing as 1. Did that happen again in a different game? It totally happened in 1, though, right? Where somebody will step in that you don't expect to step in. So he steps in, stops everybody from getting shot. I think he would have just walked straight at the guy. Even if the guy kept shooting him, I think he would have kept going. But I will say this. His, end speech to Haruka and just to everybody, phenomenal. When Haruka wakes up, and he says, I had so many things to say. I was going to yell at you, I was mad. But now, now that you're awake, it's just good to see you awake. And some of the times that he speaks, it's the most emotion you've probably ever seen. Well, no, he has cried before for, I would say, less things, which is kind of an annoyance. But he, I would say, is very emotional in this game. I mean, the character is just so good. Such an iconic, amazing character. But I loved him. And I love some of those deeper moments where it's a lot more quiet. It's him and another character, or him and a couple characters, and he's doing something. And it definitely got me. Like, I didn't cry, but like it totally, I felt genuine emotion as he's saying goodbye. Now, like, again, he's not going to die. I think you probably should have killed. I don't know. Like, is he a character that's unkillable? And it's like, that's probably where you would have killed him, is right there when he got shot, when he was saying his goodbyes and making sure everybody was going to take care of each other. That would have been a perfect time to do it. And then, you have the ending and you have the epilogue, and there's a lot. I mean, like, after he gets shot and dies, there's plenty, like, there's like 20 minutes of cutscenes to set basically everything up, right? That he'll go off the grid. He won't see anybody from the orphanage again, putting everybody in their starting positions for future things. Majima, Daigo, all of them kind of, get out of jail because of Kiryu, right? So that explains itself. And it's really good. It's interesting. It's cool to see Date-san try to stop him and be like, why would you do this? Why are you going to, sacrifice your life? You'll never see these kids again. Why would you do this? And, Kiryu's, the danger is always going to follow. Best way of handling it is for me to just kind of peace out. And then, so again, I got emotional, I would say, when he was dying and talking to Haruka and all of them. I also got emotional with the orphanage when he's watching and Haruto is learning to walk, and they're all encouraging him, and then he falls and he looks, right, and he kind of holds his hands out, and then he gets back up and he keeps trying, and Kiryu's watching. Now, on one side of things, why in God's name would you do that? If you're him, you're supposed to be dead. You're supposed to be as far away as possible. You don't want to link yourself to that orphanage anymore, and yet you're standing like right outside the gate. So just want to throw that out there. But in terms of, like, again, the cliche, pushing it aside, I think that's an incredibly emotional ending, and it probably, like, Zero's ending is about as perfect as it gets. One's ending, I also think, is about as perfect as it gets. Two's is really good, but it starts to get, like, repetitive. It starts to kind of repeat things from the past. Then it really starts to kind of drop, and I've kind of, like, nitpicks with each of them. And 6, I would say, is up there. So, again, if we're ranking even just the endings, I think 6 has to be in the top 3 or 4. And then if we're doing games, I think 6 has to be in the top 3 or 4. I think this is a top tier or an above average, whatever you want to call it. I think this is one of the better Yakuza games. Now, again, I haven't played all of them. I still have a couple more to go, but I'm really happy. I'm really happy I'm not happy really to be done, because I actually kind of miss it. I miss those characters. I miss the stories. I miss the locations. I miss the fighting. I miss Kiryu. And now for me, I don't have to wait too long, right? Wait till November, get to play as him again. Wait till early 2024, get to play him in Infinite Wealth. But, as this to kind of end his journey, I think, like, that's also why. Because as you're doing these last boss fights, as it's so iconic, he takes off the shirt like one last time, and you're like, you feel it. You're like, oh, this is it. This is it. One final time. The last fight when he's talking to Haruka, I know he's not going to die. But again, you think about it in the time that you're playing, and it's like, I think they did a really good job. The ending, watching Haruto walk, I think is pretty emotional, that he loves these people or these kids so much. They love him so much, and they think he's dead. Like, that's also a very sad thing, is Haruka flat out believes he's dead. So I wonder what'll happen. I got some theories for that I'll probably do on my main channel podcast now. I think they could maybe bring everybody back at some point, but for now, again, you got to play it like in the moment. So I'm very happy I did this. 7 games later, I actually can't believe I did it. If you would have told me I'd be a Yakuza fan like 2-3 years ago, I don't even know what I would have said back to you, but it's been quite a journey. So you let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed. We'll be continuing it. I'm not going to play them for a little bit. I am actually going to do Like a Dragon relatively soon, but that's a long game. So you can expect videos for the rest of the series. It'll just take a little bit, okay? Thank you for watching. I'll see you all on the next one.